Samson and Delilah by Peter Paul Rubens. The story of Samson and Delilah is a tale from the Old Testament of the Bible. Samson was a leader of Israelites and possessed incredible physical strength given to him by God. He used this strength to fight against Philistines, the enemies of his people. Delilah was a woman hired by the Philistine rulers to discover the source of Samson's strength so they could capture him. Delilah seduced Samson and repeatedly asked him to reveal the secret of his strength. Each time, Samson gave her a false answer, but eventually he revealed that his strength came from his long hair which had never been cut. Delilah betrayed Samson by cutting off his hair while he slept, and the Philistines were able to capture him and blind him. They brought him to their temple as a prisoner, where he was forced to perform feats of strength for their amusement. However, Samson's hair began to grow back and his strength was starting to return. In a final act of strength and defiance, he pulled down the pillars of the temple, killing himself and many of the Philistines who were gathered there. St. George by Solomon J. Solomon. The legend of St. George starts in a village terrorized by a dragon. To appease the beast, locals were offering livestock every day to satisfy its hunger. However, their resources had eventually run out and the king decreed that they must sacrifice the local children to keep the dragon at bay. The human sacrifice was chosen by a lottery, and eventually the king's daughter was randomly selected. As she was being led to the dragon, St. George happened to pass by. Horrified by what he discovered, he offered to slay the dragon. During his battle with the dragon, St. George noticed a vulnerable patch of skin under its tough hide and charged forward with his sword, slaying the beast. The villagers held a huge feast in his honor, and the day of the feast, 23rd of April, is celebrated each year in tribute to the bravery of Queen Esther by Edwin Long. Esther is the heroine of a story from the Jewish Holy Book. In the Persian Empire, the Persian king Ahasuerus seeks a new wife after his queen, Vashti, is deposed for disobeying him. A Jewess named Esther is chosen to fulfill this role due to her beauty. Ahasuerus' Grand Vizier, Haman, is offended by Esther's cousin and guardian, Mordecai, who refuses to kiss the ground before Haman. Consequently, Haman plots to have all the Jewish subjects of Persia killed, and tricks Ahasuerus to permit him to do so. However, Esther stops the scheme by revealing Haman's eradication plans to Ahasuerus, who then has Haman executed. As royal orders, including the order for eradication issued by Haman, cannot be revoked under Persian law, the king grants permission to the Jews to eliminate their enemies instead, so they can protect themselves. Esther's story provides the traditional explanation for the Jewish holiday of Purim, celebrated on the day when Jews eliminated their enemies after the Haman's plan was reversed. Bathsheba by Jean Leon Jerome. Bathsheba is a character from the Hebrew Bible. She was the wife of David and the mother of Solomon, two kings of the Israelites. In the biblical narrative, King David lusted after Bathsheba after he saw her bathing on a rooftop. However, she was already married to a soldier, Uriah. David ordered for Uriah to be placed on the front lines of a battle leading to his death and enabling a lawful marriage between David and Bathsheba. Belshazzar's Feast by John Martin. The painting depicts a biblical story about the king of Babylon, Belshazzar. After looting the main temple in the land of Israelites, Belshazzar holds a great feast for 1,000 of his lords, and commands that the temple vessels from Jerusalem be brought in so that they can drink from them. As the Babylonians drink, a hand appears and writes on the wall. It is later deciphered that the writing on the wall says that the god, insulted by the actions of the king of Babylon, has doomed Belshazzar to die. The phrase "the writing on the wall" has grown to be a popular idiomatic expression referring to the foreshadowing of any impending doom, misfortune, or end. The Fall of the Rebel Angels by Sebastiano Rixai. In Christian religion, Satan is considered to be the embodiment of evil. However, he was once one of God's angels. Satan was disdainful and prideful and often contested God's will. For example, he refused to bow to mankind when the first man was created. Eventually, Satan distanced himself from God and convinced 1/3 of angels to join his rebellion, starting a war in heaven. Instructed by God, Archangel Michael cast out rebels from heaven. Virgin and Child with Angels by Bartolomeo Cavarazzi. The virgin birth of Jesus is a central doctrine of the Christian faith and is described in the New Testament of the Bible. According to the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke, Mary, a young woman from Nazareth, was visited by an angel who told her she would conceive a son through the Holy Spirit. Mary was engaged to Joseph, a carpenter, but was a virgin at the time of the conception of Jesus. Despite initial doubts, Joseph accepted Mary's story and took her as his wife. Jesus was born in Bethlehem and was worshipped by the wise men as the long-awaited Messiah. The virgin birth of Jesus is seen as a miraculous event and is celebrated by Christians around the world at Christmas. It is also believed by many to be a fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies and a sign of Jesus' divinity.